Welcome back to the MovieBabble podcast. Colin is away this week, so it's me, Brennan, and I'm joined by Nick. How's it going?
What's going on, Brennan?
Not too much.
I got no jokes for you.
Nothing today. Um, yeah, I mean it's going pretty well. This week we have some good stuff to touch on, and it wouldn't be a podcast without us if we didn't touch on some award stuff. So we are going to touch on some Razzies.
Yeah, we always, the Oscars and all of their delineations follow us no matter what we do.
We also got some interesting box office news out of China, as well as a little bit out of New York as well. And then we're going to run through the typical Netflix top 10 and then go over some other stuff there near the end. But first, let's jump into those Razzies. I think that's a good, fun way to start this thing off. So the Razzies, obviously the worst movies of the year awards. They're every year. They always present, I think, like the same weekend as the Oscars. I think like the Saturday before the Sunday the Oscars usually, if I'm not mistaken. But they're always pretty fun to look at. So let's do a little rundown here. So worst picture from the Razzies. We got 365 Days, Absolute Proof, Dolittle, Fantasy Island, and Music. I've seen two of those five. Both were not very good. How about you? Have you checked off all five of these?
I've seen 4 out of 5. Absolute Proof is the only one, and that's just because I didn't know this movie existed until I saw this rundown, which has me a little worried because it's the My Pillow dude, Mike Lindell, just like spouting conspiracy theories about the election. So I'm worried that the Razzies is giving it a bigger platform than it had before because I don't feel like anyone knew about
Yeah.
this except if you're like a Q person yourself. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it definitely is. It's kind of helping to maybe make it a little more popular. It's funny because this kind of leads into our next one because Mike Lindell got a Worst Actor nomination. But for me, I put 365 Days as my worst movie of 2020. So it's at the very bottom there. So I would be kind of happy with that pick. I feel like out of these five, the Razzies, like they always try to make a statement. I think you could see them pick Absolute Proof, but I don't know if it's popular enough for them to choose, if you know what I mean. So I could see Music actually being their pick. I think Music made enough headlines with the Golden Globe nominations that it could be like a funny pick for them to do. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, doesn't the Razzies? They always like to pile on with like kind of like they just see what people are making fun of on Twitter and then just make that the entire joke of the ceremony. Like when Batman v Superman came out, it was just like it wasn't like weren't like Ben Affleck and Cavill both nominated for worst
Yeah,
actor or like the worst pair, and then it was just Batman v Superman for like everything, and it was funny, but like that's kind of the one thing about the Razzies is just like I feel like they're in like they're a meme that went too far, you know, where like they're just like all jokes and then like they just pile on and sometimes it gets pretty mean spirited because the irony leaves. Um, but I feel like this year it's kind of funny to you look at the lists, except for there's a few Hubie Halloween noms in there, and I will not have Hubie Halloween slander on this podcast. So
yeah, that kind of leads right into our next one. So worst actor, Adam Sandler for Hubie, which is disgraceful. They didn't
awful.
give him
Best actor.
they didn't give him the Razzie Redeemer last year for Uncut Gems. So I feel like they're doing him dirty here, giving him another worst actor nomination. So you got Adam Sandler for Hubie Halloween, David Spade for The Wrong Missy, Michael Marone for 365 Days. You got Mike Lindell, and it's funny, this Hollywood Reporter article uh, quotes in there, the My Pillow guy for Absolute Proof,
In case you didn't know.
and then Robert Downey Jr. for Dolittle. This seems like a pretty predictable five, especially with that Robert Downey Jr. one. I finally watched that like 2 weeks ago while I was just on the treadmill. Uh, just like, I just want to pop something on, get a watch in while I'm just
Yeah.
exercising.
That's the right place to watch that, you know?
And it was bad, but his accent's just it's a little bit too much at times.
I still I can't get out of my head that the end of that movie is just they help a dragon shit out a bunch of like what was it like an accordion that was like stuck up its ass or
Yeah.
something. Like that's the end of that movie. Someone thought that was a good idea. I don't
I
understand it.
could see Mike Lindell winning, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't even know if I did I answer your question about which movie I won best or worst picture. I feel like 365 Days is the pick for me, because I feel like that was because I had the next Netflix machinery behind it. People were making a lot of jokes about that, so I feel like that could run the table
Yeah,
here.
and Hubie Halloween's just not bad enough. Like it's not a Jack and Jill. I think that movie's actually fine. Like it's not a bad movie particularly, but
Yeah.
yeah, I could see the lead actor there from 365 Days potentially winning because he was pretty popular. Like all his cringy, creepy one-liners in the movie, like they were all over Twitter when it came out. So I could see him pulling out the win here.
Yeah, and then he chokes the lead actress, and it's supposed to be like this hot thing that the movie tries to play off. It's the most bizarre. Well, the entirety of 365 Days is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. But that's another conversation.
It's rough. So yeah, so let's go to the best actress there, or sorry, worst actress. Sorry,
No, it's the best actress.
the
in
best
our
worst
hearts.
actress. You got Anna Marie Siakluka from 365 Days, which is obviously the counterpart there in the lead role. Lauren Lapkus from The Wrong Missy. Kate Hudson in music, which I think will probably win. Katie Holmes for Bram's The Boy 2 and The Secret Dare to Dream. And she's a Razzie darling. She always gets nominated. Anne Hathaway as well for The Last Thing He Wanted and The Witches. Poor girl. I mean, love Anne Hathaway, and it's a movie that I was hoping would be good. The Last Thing He Wanted, but just wasn't. But I do see Kate Hudson winning here.
Yeah, shout out to Colin and I for thinking like, oh, Last Thing He Wanted. This is a Sundance must see when we saw it like last year, and then immediately after it ends, I'm like texting Colin frantically like does that movie make any sense? Do you know what happened in that movie? So that's a rough one for Anne Hathaway. But I feel like when I say the Razzies can get a little mean spirited, I feel like Katie Holmes is one of those because she got caught up in the whole like Tom Cruise thing. That's just like I feel like they just like to dump on her, which is very fun. But yeah, I think Kate Hudson is the pick.
Yeah,
She's the most memeable one here.
it's got to be. Worst supporting actress. They got Maddie Ziegler for music, Kristen Wiig for Wonder Woman 1984, Maggie Q for Fantasy Island, Lucy Hale for Fantasy Island, and then they go with Glenn Close for Hillbilly Elegy, which is it's a pick that's worth talking about because I don't think she's awful in the movie personally. I think she's all right, but I think it is one of those roles that it's such a popular one that they go for it anyways. And if you check out my Oscar predictions on the site that just dropped on Sunday here, I predict her to get an Oscar nomination. So she might be one of the rare people to get a Razzie nom and an Oscar nom. And it has happened before for the same role, but it's very rare.
That would be hilarious. I mean, I'm in the opposite camp where I just think she's flat out bad in this movie, and I think most of it comes with it's like the most Oscar baity thing you'll ever see, where it's this like beautiful, stately actress like uglying herself up for this role, and like her character name is Mima or whatever it is. So it's like a parody of that character, but I would hope she wins. It'd be hilarious. I feel like that would invalidate everything the Oscars does, right? If she wins the Razzie.
And we need to see her win both. I mean, I don't want her to win the Oscar, but we need to see her win both.
Then that means it's like one of the best performances ever,
Yeah.
right? Because it'd be right up there with like Pacino and Heat, where people are like, is this performance good? Is it bad? I can't tell, but I love watching it. I don't think it's up there, but
it's interesting. And you know what? I think a lot of her performance too is that bad script. I remember we talked a few weeks ago about that Terminator allegory they used in the movie.
The best line in the movie.
Yeah, it's a rough one. So she lands there. So now worst supporting actor. I keep wanting to say best, but worst supporting actor. Chevy Chase for the very excellent Mr. Dundee. Rudy Giuliani for Borat, and I think he'll probably win. Shia LaBeouf for The Tax Collector, and then you got Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis in like the most Arnold and Bruce titled movies. So you got Arnold Schwarzenegger for Iron Mask, which I've never heard of. Then you got Bruce Willis for Breach, Hard Kill, and for Survive the Night. These are just so classic Bruce Willis titled movies in his kind of post good Bruce Willis career era.
Yeah. Have you seen the trailer to that Iron Mask movie?
No.
It's insane. So it's Jackie Chan is in it too. I think it's a Russian movie, and it's like a backdoor sequel to a Russian movie that was made a few years ago that neither Schwarzenegger or Jackie Chan were in, and they're wearing like these crazy like beards, and there's like some weird I can't even explain it. It's insane. But Arnold Schwarzenegger is in it, so
It's odd. Yeah, I mean, you gotta love Arnold, but that's an interesting choice. You got to make your money, I guess. But you think,
yeah, tough for Bruce too. He's just in like VOD hell at this
yeah,
point. I mean, I feel like he brings that on himself because he just doesn't care anymore when he performs. But
yeah,
it's tough to see.
yeah. Worst screen combo now, and I think we know what our winner's going to be. But we got Adam Sandler and his grating simpleton voice for Hubie Halloween, Lauren Lapkus and David Spade for The Wrong Missy, Harrison Ford and the totally fake looking CGI dog in Call of the Wild. I still love those behind the scenes footage from that movie.
Oh, they're hilarious. They're so funny.
Um,
It's the person on the ground on all fours.
it's too good. Harrison Ford's like he's got to be weirded out. Robert Downey
He's probably just so pissed.
Robert Downey Jr. and his utterly unconvincing Welsh accent there in Dolittle. And then the one that I think is going to be the winner is Maria Bakalova and Rudy Giuliani in brackets there. Yes, that really is Rudy Giuliani for Borat's subsequent movie film. And, I think they'll probably go for this one just because it's so popular and it really took over social media and even just mainstream news whenever this movie came out in October. So I predict that'll be the winner. Maybe even if it's not the worthy winner, I think it's just such a tough category to interpret, especially with these very different nominees. So I think that'll probably pull it out.
Yeah, I kind of like how they go, like they do fun stuff
Mhm.
with this, like like Harrison Ford and the fake looking CGI dog. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, and like with I think they're just gonna want to award Rudy Giuliani any chance they can get. So I I expect him to I expect him to pull it
Oh,
out.
definitely. That's the typical pile
Mhm.
on. This thing made a lot of headlines, so let's let him
Yeah.
win. But I hope they like send him his award or like do something else with that. That'd be hilarious.
So now we got worst director here, and the first one is interesting. Charles Band for all three Barbie and Kendra movies. So I'm like all three, and I looked it up, and like he released three movies this year, and they're all pretty short. I think they're all like under an hour each, but yeah. So Charles Band for all three Barbie and Kendra movies. Barbara Bialos and Thomas Mendez for 365 Days. Stephen Gaghan for Doolittle. They throw into Ron Howard for Hillbilly, and then Sia gets one for music, and I could see Sia pulling it out.
Yeah, that's the jokey one. The Charles Band movies are insane. There's another ones I didn't know that existed, and they just look like the worst. Let's put two actors in front of a green screen. They're like the three movies. Like the first one is called like Corona Zombies, so like yeah, like obviously, and then the second one is like Barbie and Kendra, like Storm Area 51. And then like the other one, I can't remember what the other one is, but they're all just like, wow, like they did this. This is someone gave him money to make these.
Oh God, cringe. Worst screenplay. 365 Days, all three Barbie and Kendra movies, Doolittle, Fantasy Island, and Hillbilly. I don't know here. I think this is a tough one. I think they could go Hillbilly, but I don't know. I like it's probably honestly the best of the five, but also bad at the same time, and would be interesting to give it to, but we'll see.
Yeah, shout out to Fantasy Island for quietly just being the worst movie that no one's talking about. Because I feel like no one cared when that movie came out and no one saw it. But you've seen it, right? It's like one of the worst things like that came out this past year. It's really really
Yeah,
bad.
no, I actually took a rain check on that one. I never watched it, but it's been on my
Oh, that's smart.
it's
That's smart.
it's been on my Prime home screen, just sitting there as like new ads, and it's just kind of sitting there. I'm like, maybe one day I'll just pop it on while I'm doing some homework or something, but
That's not a good idea. You shouldn't do that.
uh, and then the last one here is the worst remake, ripoff, or sequel. So they got Wonder Woman 1984, Hubie Halloween, which is a ripoff of Ernest Scared Stupid. Interesting. Fantasy Island, Doolittle, and then 365 Days, which they consider a ripoff of 50 Shades of Grey. And it's a Polish remake, actually. So yeah, we got these here. I think they'll probably go 365 Days just because I think that and music and Rudy are going to be the big winners of the night, personally, with or the big losers, you could say, for the Razzies.
Yeah, probably. I wonder how they're gonna do the event. Are they just gonna make the Zoom screens even more shitty? Like they just try to make it as unclear and like all pixely as possible,
Yeah, that'd be funny.
right?
Yeah.
Because don't they normally do it in like an airport like hotel ballroom or something like that? Isn't that what they normally do? Like they try to make it as terrible as
Yeah,
possible.
and one funny point, it's kind of pulling away from this, but I think Sandra Bullock actually went to accept her award one time uh, at the Razzies. I think it was the year that she won for The Blind Side, the Oscar. I think she also lost for something else that year, and it was so funny because one night she had to accept her Razzie, and then the next one the Oscar or something like that. But she was actually there, and it's rare, but it's funny to see when people attend this thing. I mean, you wouldn't want to attend it unless you're kind of chill with it. But she was, and she attended, and she gave a little acceptance speech.
Wasn't that for All About Steve or whatever that movie is,
Yeah,
where she's
that's
like obsessed with Bradley Cooper or whatever? I think I think that's what that movie's called. I watched like 15 minutes of it one time and it looked like the worst thing, so I stopped. But I think what's the other really famous one? It's the Halle Berry performance, right, for Catwoman,
yeah,
where she like got up there and was like fake crying, and it was one of the like it was one of her best performances, and that's not even me making a joke. It was just really really good.
yeah. So you're right. It was all about Steve there for Sandra Bullock, and it was the same year that she won the Oscar. So, but yeah, that Halle Berry one sounds quite familiar. I think I recall that as well. But I don't think obviously it's probably going to be virtual this year. Um, Not going to be as solid, but it'd be funny to see Rudy Giuliani pull up, accept some awards.
Yeah, he just shows up. Complete 180 from who he's been the past what like forever.
Well,
So,
they're going to host it. Did you hear they're going to host the Razzies at the Four Seasons?
are
You know
there?
what?
I got it. We got there.
So that's your Razzie rundown. A lot of fun. So that's going to be in April. Next thing we did want to touch on, though, there was an article from The Ringer, a very interesting article talking about cinemas and talking about going back to the movie theaters. And they touch on China. Um, Obviously, China is where COVID kind of originated, and they had a tough time at the start, but they seem to have been one of the better countries to handle it. I know with the government being a little bit more authoritarian than others, they have a little more of a clamp on the way they do things and the way their lockdowns are run. So they have been able to, in that respect, kind of weed out transmission of cases better than other places. So they opened up theaters fully a while back, and then uh, kind of things have been starting to come out there, and slowly but surely the market has been booming in China, which is pretty impressive. They did a re-release of, first thing to note, of Avatar last weekend, and it officially reclaimed the crown. It passed Avengers Endgame with this re-release, so I think we're going to see nonstop of Avatar and Avengers going back and forth just with re-releases. But that's kind of off the point here. But kind of getting back on the track, you see the Chinese box office, and it's absolutely booming. There's a film called Hi Mom, which is being dubbed as the Chinese Back to the Future. It made $700 million in just 2 months this year at the Chinese box office, and that's just absolutely incredible. And it passed so many records that have been broken by American films. But what do you make of this? Do you think this is a good sign overall for movie theaters? Do you think this will translate?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I feel like out of the three of us, including Colin, I feel like I'm the most pessimistic on most things that we talk about. So like when we talk about theaters kind of like shuttering and are they coming back or not, I'm just out here being like, yes, they're gone. Goodbye forever, movie theaters. But I do feel like because we are getting to a point now, and it's still we're still kind of in this treacherous spot where vaccines are coming out a little better, cases are going down here in the States, things look a lot better. But then you also have like Texas being like, we're open, have fun, go crazies, and you're like, this doesn't feel too good. Like we're kind of like on like kids in like the last day of school, like we're really itching for this to be done, but it's not quite done. But I feel like we are starved to actually like do things again in so many different ways. Like I was just looking on like Airbnb like yesterday. I was like, what can I do something in September? I figure post vaccine actually like go somewhere. Um, So in that sense, like the communal experience, I feel like theaters are like one of the first places that people will flock back to. So like, I can't wait to like do things again. And I can't wait because I just passed my 1 year anniversary of the last movie I saw in theaters, which was Bloodshot, which is still the most like sad thing to me. But I really hope it comes back. I think there's a really good shot that um, the things that we were scared about more concerned with the movies that are actually playing in theaters rather than our theaters coming back or not. Because we're probably like, well, all this probably just leads to like only blockbusters are playing in theaters now. And then you have your indie theaters in your major cities and things like that. But it's just kind of accelerating the timeline of like that reducing of the middle ground that we've been seeing for so many years now.
100%. I do mostly agree there. Another thing I did want to touch on was a movie in February that came out in China. So just last month, Detective Chinatown 3, and $400 million dollars in its opening weekend. New record for one market opening weekend, passing Avengers Endgame. So this to me is it's an interesting sign, and I think it's a good sign that people do want to get back out. And it's not just that. I mean, we saw a few weeks ago, Tom and Jerry made $14 million dollars in its first weekend. And I'm like, Tom and Jerry, but I mean, you think of it, theaters are slowly starting to reopen. New York City, they're starting to open a couple of their theaters, obviously, and the vaccine's been rolling out pretty well in the United States. And I didn't really know this, but I mean, having that New York City market shut down for so long must have been so tough on the industry, because I didn't realize this, but three of the boroughs in New York City make up 3% of the overall box office in America. I forget which three. There's five total boroughs: Manhattan, Queens, the Bronx, Brooklyn. Can't name the last one there, but three of them make up 3% of the overall box office. So it's a big thing. And they just started opening a few weeks ago. Tenet finally released in New York City on in theaters. So it's interesting, and I am very excited to see what happens. I think these next few months hopefully are good. Vaccines are a little bit slower here in Canada than they are in the United States, but I do hope we see at least over this summer something promising. But yeah, and one point that they made in this article, this Ringer article, that I did enjoy was, when you think about things, you think about, say, eating it at a restaurant versus takeout. Um, does the kind of takeout industry, and does how much people have been ordering takeout during the pandemic, will that kill inside eating? And I don't think so. I think people will want to go out and enjoy a meal, and I think it's similar to theaters. I think they can coexist in the same universe, if you will. And I do hope to see theaters thrive again, hopefully. And I think hopefully by 2022 we see like back to a normal running box office in North America. I know this year's going to be weird, but I do hope we see that next year.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've kind of locked onto is that, I mean, for how many, like 5 or 10 years now, I feel like it's just really hard to grab people's attention. So like your $25 million movie, or like your restaurant that is fine, gets decent Yelp reviews, like that's like those kind of things might go away. But I feel like if there's a way to eventize everything, people are still going to want to come out. It's just a matter of creating the right experience for how like our interests have changed. Because I do think in a lot of ways, like people like, I mean, there's gonna be so many different changes that come out of like all of this, like remote work and definitely more takeout. And there are things that will undeniably change and change for good. But I think people just want to do things. It sounds stupid, but it's sometimes as simple as that. Like we kind of just want to go out, and there's like few things that are more fun than watching a good horror movie with a crowded theater and stuff like that. Or like even like Avengers Endgame was really cool to see in theaters. It was packed. That was a really fun communal experience. I feel like people just really crave that. So maybe I just need to be less pessimistic on this podcast, because I do think things will come back, and I think this all the information laid out in this article are really good signs.
Definitely. So that's our little tidbit on the box office. We'll move on to now Netflix's top 10 real quick. Just want to run through it. So at number 10 this week we had I Am Legend. I remember being pretty young when it came out. I remember being a little bit scared to watch it when I was a kid. I remember that very well. So that was at number 10. We got Moxie at 9, Training Day at 8. Then you got Safe Haven, the Block Island Sound, The Dark Knight's on here. I Care a Lot at 4. It's really holding in strong. And then Bigfoot Family at 3, Parker at 2, and Yes Day at 1. So I'm not too familiar with much on this list besides some of those older movies. Um, yeah, so that's our Netflix top 10. Not really too much to run over there, would you say?
Yeah, I got nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of what it's been. So now we'll move on to the segment of our show without a name. I'll call it book club, but with a movie.
Yeah, I think we just can never come up with a name with this. We just have to each week just take turns coming up with stupid names.
Yeah.
But basically, we just choose a movie for all of us to watch.
Yeah.
I guess it's our movie club.
It's pretty cool. So this week, I'll let you take it away in a second there because it was your pick, but we watched a Mickey and Nicky, a 1976 film written and directed by Elaine May. So if you wanted to kick us off there with this movie a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, Mikey and Nicky was a movie that I was really interested in watching for a while. I bought it on Criterion, and I just laying on my shelf, and I needed an excuse to watch it. So here we are. But I was really interested in it because I don't have a lot of experience with Elaine May, just as like a comedic force and just as a performer in general. And I've done a lot of reading on her recently, and she is so influential. And I feel like she just does not get her due in the same way. Like she was big with Mike Nichols, the big like influential director. They had their comedy special or stand up routine together, and like Steve Martin's has widely said that Elaine May is like one of his biggest influences and things like that. But yeah, she's been a playwright and a screenwriter for a really long time. She's written a bunch of screenplays for Mike Nichols movies, but she's only directed a few movies, and there's a few reasons for that. So Mikey and Nicky was her third movie that she directed. And this movie was a wild, like, behind the scenes mess. It's like kind of an all timer when you get into the weeds of it. So it was originally planned to come out in the summer of 1975, and it had a $1.8 million budget. And so I did a little math, basically just putting it into a calculator on a website. But that is $9 to $10 million in today's money. But the production was so wild and it went way over budget that it didn't end up coming out until December of the following year, and it cost $4.3 million. So it ended up being like basically a $21 million movie by today's standards, which just is like, I can't imagine the studio just being like you're just hemorrhaging money for us. So they fired her on the movie, but she got to stay on basically because as they were firing her, she stole two of the film's negatives from the studio and just hid them in her friend's garage in Connecticut. This is a crazy story. And she was like, I'm not giving these back until you rehire me and let me finish the movie. And then Paramount was like, I guess we have no bargaining power here. So they let her finish the movie, and it flopped, obviously. And then she was just put in director jail for a while. And then a decade later, she made Ishtar, which is one of the most famous box office flops in the history of movies. I think the original budget was around 28 million, and the final budget was 51 million after she finally finished it. So that inflated it to today's standards about $120 million movie, which is insane. So it rose from like 65-ish to 120. That's like you were given the money to make like a Social Network, and you bring it back and it's like a CGI extravaganza. Like it's the same. It's nuts. So yeah, after Ishtar, which is one of the most famous bombs ever, she just never directed again. So she did a lot of playwriting and things like that, but she just didn't return. So I think that's probably one of the reasons we don't hold her in the same esteem. But that's kind of why I wanted to check out this movie, because Criterion did a lot with basically after the Mikey and Nicky debacle, she got the rights to the movie from Paramount, and then Criterion helped facilitate this director's cut, which is out now, and I think it's available on HBO Max and Prime, as well as the Criterion collection. But yeah, I just really wanted to check it out. So what did you think of it?
Yeah, it was very good movie. I enjoyed it. I think we spoke about this before you got on, but it's a little bit messy, as you said, and I think that's a little bit of the charm of it. It kind of reminded me a little bit because some of the city sequences and just kind of how grimy the movie is at times. It reminded me of two movies I watched recently. Weirdly, Superfly and Taxi Driver. It kind of has that same kind of vibe a little bit in the city and just kind of that
Hmm.
griminess, a little bit of the film. But it was great to see Peter Falk here, who is a classic actor as Columbo. Um, and even John Cassavetes, who's a very popular actor as well. It's just cool to see them. But yeah, I enjoy this movie. I think it's a good pick from you. And that backstory you talked about, that is just that's one for the ages. I think hiding the film at your friend's house and just kind of holding them ransom there for that. I think that's a really fun story.
Yeah, I think that definitely contributes to how messy the movie looks. Because like, there's some instances in the film where the actual film itself just doesn't look very good. Like, there's a lot of moments where it just seems like the movie just like looks kind of like not good.
I noticed that.
And like, there's some hilarious like ADR dubbings in this movie that just clearly, like, the mouths, like the voice isn't matching the mouth at all. They're just really really bad.
There was one scene where it was like
But
blurry. Even do you remember that? There was a couple shots of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Apparently, I didn't see it, but apparently there's one scene where you can see the boom mic. I didn't notice it this time. Maybe I was looking at my phone, which I'm telling on myself there because I shouldn't do it anymore. But it's just, yeah, I really like this movie because I had another reason for choosing it because I'm a Philadelphian at heart, and this movie takes place in grimy 1970s Philadelphia. But the reason I do really like this is that when you think of like mob movies, you think of like The Godfather, right? Like these, or Goodfellas, like these very operatic, big time movies with almost like these like godlike figures in a sense. And in this movie, like all these people just kind of suck, like they're low level goons. Um, the basically, I guess we haven't even talked about the plot of this movie, where Nicky, the John Cassavetes character, is basically he's gonna get killed by the mob. They put out a hit on him because he stole some money, and so he's like freaking out in this just disgusting hotel, and then he calls up his old pal Mikey to just help him out. So it's a all in one night movie of them just trying to evade this hitman played by Beatty, and yeah, that's basically the movie. It's just them hanging out, just like being pals, being bros, toxic masculinity, and all that. Um, but I just love how disgusting and just like these people, like, they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, and that's the great part of it too, where um, they're both they're doing all these things for self-preservation, but they also know that the other one is the only one who knows them very very well, because there's a really telling conversation later on with Peter Falk and his wife, where he has to keep repeating himself, and she just doesn't really know all these things about him, and Nicky can rattle off all those details by heart, and they have this really complicated relationship, but deep down they both know that they're the best friends, and they both are the only people who know everything about each other. So it's all these really fascinating juxtapositions where like Mikey is like alerting the hitman where Nicky is, because he's trying to show to the mob boss that he's not trying to help Nicky, but he also does want to help Nicky. So there's all these really cool, interesting things in this movie where, like, I think there's a really good scene where Nicky goes to visit his mom's graveyard, and he's like really sad, but he's also hysterically laughing at the gravesite. Yeah, and it's just like, it's all these things where he's just hysterical the entire movie. John Cassavetes is really good. I love how good he is in this movie, but it's just, he's so hysterical, and he clearly, like, this moment to him is like so important, but also he's such a shithead that all he can do is laugh, and just like he's a really great drunken laugh in this movie. It's really good. So yeah, it's just really cool. I love a good all in one night movie. Really love Scorsese's After Hours. This movie is just neat. I'm really happy that Criterion helped Elaine May out on this one, because it seems like it seems like people have definitely picked up on this movie since. Like, it's got a critical reevaluation since it came out. I think it was 2019 when it came out on Criterion, but I just like that because I feel like she is someone who we don't really talk about a lot, and I'm looking forward to actually like getting into like her other movies and writing and whatnot because she seems like a really fascinating figure, and she's from Philadelphia, so it's like I got
Yeah.
to.
So it came out in 1976, but you have the director's cut that came in 86, and then the Criterion Collection director's cut there that came out in 2019. So I'm kind of trying to figure out now which one I watched. So you watched the Criterion cut from the 19.
That's I was wondering that, where it's like I probably watched the final version. I'm wondering if you
Mhm.
had a lesser version
I
or not.
wonder. I watched mine on Prime. So you said Tubi is another place where you can check out this movie as well, right?
Yeah, and HBO Max
Right.
too. I think
Okay.
it's I do like it's all over the place now, which is
Yeah,
neat.
I do wonder. I feel like you probably have the exclusive one. I feel like Criterion would want to hold on to that. So I wonder if I would have seen the original or the second director's cut. I'm probably guessing the second director's, but I'm gonna look into that now after we finish up recording here. What was the runtime? Do you remember? I had a hour 46 for me.
Yeah, mine's basically the same. So maybe it was the exact same
Okay.
one. Maybe that's the one they put into circulation now.
hmm It is pretty unique though. I always love movies that have like three different cuts, just kind of talking about what's different and kind of the history behind those cuts as well. But you gotta love Criterion coming in clutch for her there.
Yeah, it's just cool. I like when they do this kind of stuff, and obviously there are definitely bones to pick with Criterion because one of the reasons I bought this movie is because I was looking specifically for a movie directed by a woman to buy, and there's just not a lot of those on the Criterion collection. It's still very slim picking. It's mostly just white dudes. So I think that's something they're trying to correct now, but it's still kind of tough. But I think this movie is really interesting. Peter Falk and Cassavetes are great in there. There's a really good cameo by Emmett Walsh, who is amazing in the Coen Brothers' Blood Simple. I always enjoy him showing up. He's a great character actor. But yeah, there's just this movie is all just about the experience because it's just like you could tell a lot of this was just improv because there's this one really good fight scene where Cassavetes slaps Peter Falk in the face and immediately slips down,
Yeah, that was good.
and that was definitely something that just happened. And there's a bunch of that in the movie where there's just they're just playing off of each other, and it really does work. You do see a lot of Elaine May's playwriting skills because the movie basically functions as a play, right? Because it's just like let's sit down and evade the hitman and talk in this place. They talk in a bar for like 10 minutes, and then they have a quick bus scene, and they go to the graveyard and have another really long chat. And it's just all these like connections of like scenes of them talking. And there's like a nice like improv logic to the movie where Cassavetes' character is basically just like, I want to do this, and now I want to do this, and they just keep going and going and going. So I really like that to it too. It's like it's pretty formless. There's really no structure to it. So in that sense, it's kind of a one of one. And yeah, it's really messy, but I think that's a lot of the charm.
Yeah,
In it. It's just
inner charm
it's really great.
for sure.
Yeah.
Good movie to dissect. Great pick for the week. With that though, I think we are done with this week's edition of the MovieBabble podcast. Nick, as always, it's great to be on chatting with each other.
Yeah. What are you choosing next week?
Oh.
You choose like a 24-hour movie?
Yeah, I'll keep it. I think Collins in the first week was only like 90 minutes or so, and then yours was
Yeah.
146. Maybe I'll have to one up it. Go up 15 minutes every time. We'll peek at The Irishman.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I just bought Satan Tango on Blu-ray, which is 7 hours and 30 minutes. So
Right, yeah.
looking forward to that one coming soon.
Are you gonna do that one sitting or what? If you don't, you're not a real movie fan. You're not a real cinephile.
I don't know. I guess I'm not. But maybe you should just make us watch the Snyder Cut twice. Maybe that could be your move
8 hours.
for next week.
Well, Snyder Cut, I don't know. Anyways, as always, you can check us out on moviebabble.com. We got our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all the rest. So we'll be back next week, 100% talking about all things movies, and catch you guys then.